is not a recruitment podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Powered by People podcast. I am joined by Rex Rusling.
Good morning.
The co-founder and my partner in crime at the Rec Hub. And the queen, as we have just dubbed, the queen of personal branding, Manjuri. Before we get stuck into such an exciting topic of personal branding, Manjuri, why don't you just introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah. Good morning, and I'm
For a second time, sorry.
super excited to be here. First time, second time, three time. And yeah, I'm super excited as well. You added a layer of excitement with the Queen's personal branding as such. So I'm Manjuri Sinha, and if I'm good at personal branding, probably you know who I am.
Exactly.
But, okay, let me just tone it down. What do I do? Well, I take care of everything talent for OLX, which is a marketplace, a classifieds platform, and take care of everything talent acquisition, employer branding, talent development, as well as DEI. Pretty exciting role.
Big role.
Super big role, yes. That's why I have manic Mondays as such. That's just the occupational hazard. But yeah, all things aside, before this, I've worked with companies like Zalando, have scaled, really proud of having scaled the tech team there, and have worked with companies like Accenture back home in India. And I moved to Europe in 2014, and this was for love. At least I tell people that this was for love. But yeah, actually it was. And it's been pretty much history since then. On my personal side, I love to travel. I love to try out different cuisines, which you can definitely see on me. And I'm a big fan of wine and everything which is good under the sun, I guess. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. And as I briefly mentioned, we're going to be talking a bit about personal branding. You're a big character on the TA scene and on the circuit of you're speaking at every event. Every time I go to an event, Manjuri speaking. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I think it'd be interesting to kick off maybe by starting, why do we think personal branding is important? Because I see that it's a real rising topic, particularly amongst TA leaders. So why do you think it's important to you, Manjuri?
Well, I think it's interesting. It starts from a basic question that all of us ask as TA leaders and even TA professionals, that how do you get that seat at the table? Yeah. And I usually believe in this philosophy of, you talk about your performance currency, which is definitely what you do, what you deliver. So you cannot get to a particular stage unless you really deliver what is asked of and what's needed. That's baseline. You have to be authentic. But the second aspect of getting that seat at the table and getting asked on what should we do? How should this happen? Even from the aspect of workforce planning, just starting from there, talks about a little bit of respect as an expert and validation. And maybe it's unfortunate, but in our field of occupation of talent, especially for talent acquisition, the expertise, first of all, is kind of respected and acknowledged externally. Yeah. And then somehow companies respect that. Yeah. That yes, you are sought out by others and you are advising others, etc. That means there's something in you.
Yeah,
it's like,
it's really interesting.
I've been delivering for you for the past 3 years. You didn't think about that, but this is more interesting to you. So I think that's one way of looking at things on the stakeholder side and getting your seat at the table. Also, the fact that our profession we don't go to school for this profession.
No.
Even when I did my MBA in HR, I don't even remember if recruitment was teeny tiny bit part of it. You're taught org design, you're taught talent development, you're taught different models of learning, but nobody ever teaches you recruitment and TA. And that's another aspect of your team and folks that want to work with you, respect you once they understand, this is the person coming from this kind of expertise. This is what they know. yeah, I think these are the two reasons that I see. And the third, it's super, super important also for your own development.
Yeah.
Because when you put yourself out there, you have others also sharing with you. And I think that's really precious in our field of work.
For sure. I think it's really interesting, actually, because you cannot develop, a successful personal brand without having first built a sort of a reputation for delivery.
Yeah, of course.
You have to have something to talk about.
Yeah.
That's where the authenticity comes into it. And it's really interesting what you were saying about, for you, a big reason for TA leaders to have a really strong personal brand is actually because in our field, you almost have to show the rest of the world what you can do so it can be recognized at times in your own business.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Usually speaking, it's the other way around in other professions where everybody, for example, knows what an amazing financial director you are internally.
Yeah.
They don't know, but the rest of the world doesn't know that unless you're putting your hand up to go to conferences and things.
I wonder, how leaders within the business, and maybe you can talk from OLX's perspective. Do you think that there's an interest from OLX for you to develop your own personal brand? If you, as a leader within a community and recognised as a leader within a community, actually supports OLX's sort of business targets as such.
Yeah, I'm definitely thankful for that as well.
Yeah.
So with a company like OLX, they are interested in all of us. I mean, I'm not the only one. There are a couple of other folks in our organization who are really out there. I know some of our UX leaders are out there, etc., building a brand for themselves, for the company, for what we do, etc. So yes, that support is there. That encouragement is also there. And we would, from a branding perspective, love that, because when you, as an employee advocate, it just amplifies the advocacy there. And there are certain organizations that really go beyond, and I can talk about my previous organization. That's where I also started getting a flair for this.
Yeah.
You can have two parts to your personal brand.
Zalando, yeah?
This is Zalando, yes. Yeah. Two parts to your personal brand, because one is, yes, when you go out with, for example, if I go out with my OLX personal brand, of course, I have to align with the values, the leadership behaviors. But then there's a Manjari personal brand, where I can have my own rhetoric and certain things that I believe in or I want to pitch, etc.
Consistent with you through all of the organizations.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the flair that I'm really happy that Zalando helped us build as well in the initial days. Of course, they're great with their consumer branding marketing, so that kind of flows into their employer branding marketing as well.
When was it, would you say, that specifically started to become something you were thinking about consciously? So, like, when did you decide to think, well, actually, I'm going to start building my personal brand. I need to be more out there in the public sphere.
That's a very good question, Rex. And I remember this moment so well. We're sitting very close to that office. We used to be at the Mallstrasse office right down the road. And this was our Zalando office for tech. We had this session with Katrina Collier in 2015, beginning of 2016. And the session was all about sourcing, but it was also about creating your personal brand to create that credibility so that your reach outs, your response rates are higher when you reach out to someone. It started from there.
Really?
And interestingly, when Katrina was talking about you were going and checking out the social profile for a candidate when you want to reach out, the candidate also checks you out and your credibility matters a lot. That was an interesting starting phase for me. And then over time, couple of, I think a year down, someone in the industry or some tech leader I was working with said, you have a lot to share, why don't you? And that was another nudge that kind of happened. And yeah, that was my first ever push that I got.
And how long do you think you've been sort of really actively working on your personal brand?
I would say since 2016 end. 2016 end is when I started.
It doesn't happen overnight, does it?
It does. It has to be super consistent. Consistent. Authenticity is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Being yourself is a big part of it, but it requires a lot of work on really seeing what works, what doesn't work, how much time you need to give into it. A/B testing is a lot. Sometimes you feel that you put a very And this is like just probably human behavior, right? You put a very intelligent post out, or you analyze this article and you put that post out, and you get what, 10, even not zeros, okay, 10 likes, no one comments, and then you put a bizarre, probably a random meme out with a Mandalorian or a Yoda, and then you have 100 likes. Look, what's wrong with the world? Okay, this works. I'm going to do this. So, all jokes apart, you really have to A/B test what works with your audience. What kind of audience are you connecting with?
I think also just on that topic, it's really interesting because, personal branding is so closely aligned to just general marketing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're just marketing yourself. But, not always you might put out a post that doesn't get huge levels of sort of surface level engagement, likes and as such, but as if it's resonating with the audience that you're trying to resonate with, then it potentially is building upon. Because I think sometimes people can be quite quick to cut to a clickbait piece of post that's going to get some likes, but is it getting the engagement with the audience that you're trying to connect with, or is it just getting likes from hundreds of people that have no real interest in developing that relationship and connection with what the sort of more regular content is that you're putting out there?
That's go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that you mentioned earlier that one of the benefits for you was also the fact that, like, when you're sharing your knowledge with a growing network, that's more and more touch points that can share knowledge back.
Yep.
And so when you're doing these sort of like clickbait, memes, they might be great at like building profile, but they're maybe not necessarily the kind of like thought leadership pieces that would get a deeper connection.
Absolutely. And even
consistency, right? You've got to be consistent with varying content to keep it interesting.
Yep. Yeah. Consistent and not the likes, comments, measures, they're not the ultimate measure of this. And that's the interesting bit, Harry, when you said you might put out some content or you've been posting something and it didn't get enough traction in terms of numbers. There's a part and piece of something that I usually or sometimes do is talking about how recruiters can grow or into TA leaders or even other parts of HR, etc. This doesn't get as much traction as some of the other pieces of content. However, and this was post-pandemic. Through the pandemic, there was some of these posts that I had done. And post-pandemic, when we started getting back into live events, conferences, and meetups, I remember meeting 2 to 3 recruiters who had just started their career or had moved from another country to Berlin, had started their career. And they came up and said that, please keep posting that content because it helped me to figure something out in a new country. And this was something as I can't quantify it, but that was interesting to know, okay, now I got a boost now. That means it's actually making an impact.
Impacting,
exactly.
Actually having a difference. And that's one of my next sort of question was going to be, what do you think some of the benefits are to actually, you've obviously spent since 2016 a lot of time and energy creating a consistent message and sometimes just the work rate that you have to do to sort of coming up with content's not easy and sharing the knowledge that you have isn't. So you've spent a lot of time and energy. What do you think some of the benefits are? That's obviously one of them is like, what great feeling for someone to come up and be like, you helped me so much. Thank you for that. I sort of got some ideas, but what sort of have you seen as some of the benefits?
I think benefits, first of all, let me say, and this is all caveats, is what my husband says, that I'm a narcissist. Yeah. So this kind of feeds into this, but that's his tale, right? So you can credit this to him. So jokes apart, benefits like you right now just said, it's impacting people.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm really happy about. The second one that I've heard is voicing fears or voicing things that usually people wouldn't do in an open environment or something like that. Calling certain things out, what's going on. I think I did a podcast with Chad and Cheese, and that's where I spoke about this elephants in the room kind of a question for last year, which was the tech winter, and Rex, like you said, 4 seasons of the tech winter.
Yeah.
And I was questioning the fact that every function in an organization thinks about giving a lot of advice to HR, TA, talent.
Yep.
But a lot of this under planning and over planning that happened over the past year before the tech winter was finance as well.
Yeah.
Nobody ever questions that department or that function, right? And we were talking about real hardcore stuff. And when some folks came back with feedback, they said, we all know, but we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Thanks for putting it out there.
Yeah.
So that's the second one, that sometimes people have fear about speaking out on some things, and then they say, okay, you're doing this, then I can validate that.
Yeah.
So second advantage. Third is opening some topics as well, which people are not super comfortable. It's not about the fear, but generally they're not comfortable. Okay, can we discuss this? Are we addressing this, etc., etc.? So these are I think a couple of benefits that I've seen. Personally, I think it's a huge benefit. It's a huge benefit. Even today, I see this when I talked about the fact that you have a performance currency, yours is a relationship currency, but you also have a brand to yourself in our profession, especially for talent acquisition. With so many redundancies. Today, when I see that people either are going two ways, one, setting up things for themselves.
Yep.
It's your brand. It'll help you.
100%.
100%.
You take your network anyway.
You reach out, like you said, Rex, right? You're throwing things into the community.
Yep.
Now, when you reach out and you need that help, it'll come back.
It'll come back your way, yeah.
And third is, even if you are looking for your next gig and a next job, you have that credibility. Because just imagine today, our profession has more people looking out for jobs than jobs in the market.
For sure.
So what is the differentiating factor?
Exactly that, yeah.
And, fortunately or unfortunately, there's a lot of visibility on our profession as well. So yes, that validation, that credibility. So these are things that definitely come through this.
And like we've sort of briefly mentioned, sort of the circuit of talks that you're on, having those opportunities, right? And being asked to be a part of those events, just fun.
It's fun.
It's just fun.
It's also an opportunity to impact in a different way. So I was super happy because last year was my first year in Unleashed when I was a part of a panel with Matt Odler. And the fun thing was this year they also asked me to be on their advisory board for the program.
Fantastic.
So I was like, yay! So I can actually get to see speakers that are super cool that I've heard in other conferences, and I can recommend. Of course, they do the final selection, but I can recommend.
Whole other aspect, right? It's like a development opportunity for you to continue learning and growing.
Absolutely.
Experiencing new things. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you cannot take away the fact that even if you get a 5 minutes with someone like Josh Person in one of these conferences, or just be called out, okay, you can be a part of a round table with one of the great speakers and all that. I think that's another learning experience altogether.
100%.
So with all of this, it's a lot. And when you couple that with the fact that you have a very big role at OLX, I'm sure there'll be people listening to this podcast thinking, well, I'm too busy to spend this time on my personal brand. How do you balance having a very big role here at OLX with also being able to grow a strong personal brand?
I think an excellent question. And I've seen a couple of my colleagues also do the same. I can at least say that I don't have children, so probably that's one area where I can contribute to my personal brand there. But I've also seen my own colleagues who have children also do the same thing. It's about trade-offs. It's about the time. Of course, you don't compromise on your day job, but how do you couple it with your day job? So, of course, I take care of branding as well with my team. So that's another way of coupling this with my day job. When I was probably 2016, 17 in an IC role at that point of time, that was also the beginning when I started with investing in my personal brand. I used to give more time to this. Now I scale back sometimes. For example, probably the last 2 years, I haven't attended as many or spoken at as many conferences as I would have, previous to that year or something like that. Also, during the pandemic, I think it was an advantage in a way because 100%. Everything was online and webinar format, so you can still do it in the middle of the day and evening, and especially if you are looking at events which are post your work day, I think those are the best. So after 6 p.m. etc. But the consistency, you need to think about how it flows up and down. Sometimes simple examples of people who are looking at building their brand through LinkedIn. You can see how your profile views are going up and down.
Yep.
What is your threshold? And then you can, of course, with LinkedIn, the best part is you can plan your content.
Yeah.
So you sit, give that half an hour, 45 minutes in a week. That's all that you need. Once you've reached that consistent level, and then you can plan your content through the week to post. Of course, there's something which pops up very hot or something like that you want to share, then you can share out as well. Test your audience. I think it's very cool to test your audience. What I've seen in the last 7-8 months, there's also an interest from the audience on not just reading long posts, but getting very conversational. And I think that's also why people listen to podcasts these days, right? So that conversational bit, just putting out 2 lines, sharing your thought, also sometimes just starts an engagement and conversation.
Saw an amazing one recently where like a head of TA just literally posed a question to his network about the benefits of like embedded talent acquisition. I think it was
embedded v FTC. Sean Hynan.
Yeah,
It was a
shout out to Sean.
Shout out to Sean.
But it was just amazing. It was such a long.
Maybe we'll get you on the podcast.
Yeah, there's such a long feed of people contributing, and I feel like everybody who read that thread learned something.
Yeah,
massively. Yeah.
So I obviously just posted a meme, but.
And sometimes you can be naughty as well. So there are controversial posts, right? So you put out a controversial post. I think recently, a week ago, I put out this. There was an article talking about the only revenue generating part of HR is talent acquisition, which is fair. You can impact time to hire, especially for sales, marketing, revenue generating roles, and hence you are impacting the bottom line and the top line. And you could see a lot of comments on it. There were, folks from TA who could feel for it, who understood why I said that, because I didn't really outline the time to hire bit.
Yeah.
But then you also had people who are not from TA who had some hate against it, and then you had those trolls too there. But that's the fun part of it.
Positive friction.
Yeah.
You're creating debate, right? And,
Exactly.
And you're allowing people to share their views, and I think that's the coolest part of having a platform like yours. At some point, your building your personal brand will change, right? In terms of how you do it.
Yep.
You're initially going to start off by, particularly for us, is developing a regular and consistent post process on LinkedIn and whatever other platforms you operate on. And then it starts moving into talks and opportunities like that. When did you go out to actively pursue speaking opportunities, or were they because of your sort of consistency through LinkedIn? Was you getting asked to be on them, or how did that sort of come around?
The first one was something that I reached out to. So it was
really?
more, so I saw this. It was a conference that was happening in Denmark, but they used to do these. It was in an unconference format. So I attended one of the unconferences with Bill Burman in our Berlin office. So I like the format, and that's where it's more open, and you're not there on the stage, and so on and so forth. It's not that scary for the first time. So I reached out to this conference convener. That this person had, I think, reached out for some other project or something. That's how I knew that, okay, this person is actually hosting the conference. And I said, hey, what's up? Do you think you need more speakers in our conference? And he was like, yeah, why not? Let's have a mix. And you want to come over? Then I checked with my lead at that time. He said, yeah, sure. Go ahead and represent our company, no problem. And that's how it started. That was the first one where I had to ask. But I think after that, it's never been a touch wood. It's never been an ask. So
then you obviously smashed it and done a fantastic job.
You smashed it, and I think it was also, I still know a couple of people that I met in that conference. So
Really?
There. Then there were conferences which I attended. For example, HR Vision was a conference that I attended in Amsterdam once. And this is so interesting. A lot of people don't understand the value sometimes of visibility as well. So in one of the sessions, and you go away from the keynote when you have the smaller sessions, there were a couple of times when I'd asked a few questions, and it was super interesting. When next year the event started, the people who were organizing the event reached out and said, hey, a couple of people noticed you, they want to hear from you.
Wow.
So do you want to be a part of, so it starts with, do you want to be a part of the panel? And then they'll say, do you want to be a part of the small talk, etc., etc. So that's how it kind of starts.
So that was just you just engaging with other speakers
Yes.
as
Yes.
part of the audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, that's really interesting. I've never heard that before, actually. And you know, some people suggest in a digital format you should be doing the same on LinkedIn, right? So just posting your content is one way, one aspect of how you have to, you know, build your personal brand. But engaging with the network that you want to be a part of, through engaging with their comments, their posts, is another thing. You just did that in real life.
Yeah, and
person.
as you rightly said, it really also helps on doing the same thing on social media as well, with LinkedIn, especially with some renowned speakers or people who are really credible. I can talk about John Laslika. He puts a lot of good content on TA out, and when you add and he usually welcomes everyone to say, you know, what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
So when you add your thoughts, you'll see the reaction, the debate, etc. Usually you'll have one comment and then 10 to 12 comments on the reaction, debate, etc. Right there, it's like a mini event happening on his post. So, pretty interesting.
Who was that, sorry?
John Vlaslika.
I'm not sure I follow him.
He is ex-VP of recruiting for Amazon. He was the person who was on the Bar Raiser committee, and then now he consults companies. He was also working with OLX. We had a talent advisory training with him, etc. So,
brilliant.
I think the topic of personal brand for TA leaders has become a lot more important over the past year. Like you were saying, the tech winter that lasted 4 seasons. It actually,
Did you coin that yourself?
he said that himself. Yeah.
But it just seems to me that people have had time to invest in personal brand recently.
Yeah.
And I think that there's been a lot of communities developing, which has given rise and enabled a lot of people to work on their personal brand. So I think that now we're perhaps moving into a situation where you almost can't be a TA leader that doesn't think about your personal brand.
Yep, absolutely.
Definitely. And to be honest, any leader, you know, from our perspective, from leaders of business, from, I think there are more probably business development benefits to building personal brands. Someone always says, you know, you don't follow Microsoft, you follow Bill Gates.
Yep.
You know,
Absolutely.
There's some truth in that, right?
You know what you were saying about like the authenticity. You know, you've got your OLX and you've also got your Manjuri, and you need to be like connecting with people on a personal level. That gets them interested.
100%
in your personal
people
brand.
buy people in every
Absolutely.
industry in the world. People buy from people, and to whether it's you're selling a service or a product, or you're selling yourself in a branding perspective, or you're selling the value that you have to give to a community, or whether you're selling an opportunity to come and work in your team. You know, people want to know who you are and you know, what you believe in ultimately, because that's the window into someone, isn't it? So I think it's really, really important for leaders across business at the moment. But in TA, I feel like the rise, certainly over the last couple of years, is more evident. And you mentioned something earlier, Manjuri, about it's enabling, you know, the TA world to have a seat at the table.
Yep.
And I think that's actually been the driving force for personal brands in TA. It used to be called recruitment, you know, and now talent has become a much wider stance in business. Recruitment is one part of talent, and people don't just own recruitment now. Or, you know, we're seeing a lot more roles where talent owns. HR has become probably more compliance-led, more of the legal aspect of people. Talent owns everything else: talent development, talent engagement, talent acquisition. All of these topics are starting to become a lot more broader within the talent world, and so that's why the seat at the table is getting more prominent.
Yes.
And so now that we're getting a seat at the table, our voice is becoming louder. And I think that's what people are really trying to develop their personal brand for, I think.
Absolutely. And I think, Harry Rex, what is super important here is the personal brand has to, and I can't iterate this less or more.
Yeah.
The personal brand has to somewhere mirror your own authenticity.
Yeah.
For example, when we talk about magnetic leaders, and it can be from any industry, just needn't be from TA or sales.
Absolutely.
Even in tech, right? When you look at hiring a VP of product or a VP of tech, you would love that leader to be magnetic enough that people follow and actually join your organization or join the product or join the cause that this leader stands for.
Yeah.
That can happen 50% because of your brand, but it'll not stand if you don't have that 50% of true leadership and authentic leadership,
Sure.
and et cetera. So that's super important. So there would be some people who respect you, follow you, and I do that as well with some leaders who are probably super quiet, but they're great leaders in their space, right? And if you have a leader who's visible plus a great leader, then it's double the fun. But if you have somebody who's super visible, who's out there, but is not a great leader, is not living and walking the talk on this side, I think that's a pitfall that we need to be really...
it's really interesting. Do you think, could it even form part of your talent acquisition plans if you've got really aggressive growth plans on because employer branding is it should simply incorporate personal branding for the leaders of departments in which you're looking for long-term growth. So if you're for example, you have large growth plans across your tech teams, then should businesses be investing in their VP of engineering, CTO, to grow their personal brand?
Absolutely.
Because that's going to form part of that TA.
Absolutely, and we actually do that, and that's something that our head of employer brand and person who works with the take care of. So we have this community, especially for tech, because that's where it's super hard to find people and hire people, as all of us know in this room. So when we look at leaders, and our first focus is on women leaders in tech as well, where we want to nudge that, yes, we'll give you the platform. You can pitch in this write up for the next conference that we are going to. We'll help you as well. So you'll provide a session on how to do this talk, etc. So help you build that brand. Of course, you need to be ready to at least go on the stage and paper. But otherwise, we are ready to support and coach and guide and mentor on.
I think it's something that we even recognise and try to do with our partnerships. So when we, start a partnership and there is a particular job family like finance or engineering where a lot of the hires need to be made, one of the first things we do is look at what are those leaders doing, like how visible publicly are they? Yeah. Because the response from outreach is just so much higher if you have a leader that has had like a spotlight piece of editorial content written on them. They're posting stuff about personal interest. They're curating some professional content. That just makes it so much easier to hire, because I think candidates, if they're comparing two potential bosses and one of them is just an email address, potentially has a blank LinkedIn profile, and then the other one, they say, this person...
He's funny, he's engaging, he's witty, he's clever, he's controversial, he's got a personality.
Look, they're also posting about all this other interesting professional stuff that I'm looking at too. They're naturally gravitating towards working for that person more than the other.
And fair and super fair, right? In tech, you can actually have what we just spoke about in personal branding. This happens even on GitHub. This happens on Stack.
Sure,
We've had so many times people. I remember even during
really interesting. I didn't think about that.
Interesting. I remember candidates saying that I would love to. Our CTO at that time was Eric Bowman for Zalando, and when I reached out to this person, he said yes and brought him into the interview. My first interview, I said, general question I ask everyone, what made you say yes, to just figure out even my reach out is good or not. And he said, well, I'd love to work with Eric. He's actually helped me out on some of my solutions when I ask questions on Stack. And that's how, when I saw that, because we used to mention a blog from Eric and talk about this, we're like, whoa, okay. Then it's like, then I spread the word. All right, okay, this and so this is how even we don't see it visibly.
No, because our platform is LinkedIn.
Exactly.
But they're, coder, anyone in development, their platforms are GitHub, Stack Overflow.
Exactly. But they see
and
it
if
as
they're,
branding.
if they're exchanging and communicating through those platforms, that's developing.
Right.
Or that, if you're just simply writing some awesome code in there, and then, some engineering people are going to aspire to work with someone that writes really cool code. Yeah.
Because we used to sometimes get these nudges from the engineering leaders saying, hey, probably you might want to reach out to this person. I saw a great solution from this person.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think you probably also you have to think about the audience as well. So you might have someone who's more than happy to make a lot of their code repositories public than go and speak at a conference in front of an audience of strangers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Talking about speaking, what would be your top tips on how, because I'm awful. I hate public speaking.
You're great. Come on.
I hate public speaking. Rex does our public speaking. But what's your top tips on how to be successful as a public speaker?
3 tips: practice.
Really? Just do more.
Do more. Do more. The mirror trick works. So when you practice your talk in front of the mirror when you are alone at home, that really, really helps as well. So I think it's putting in the practice.
Yeah.
You know what you're good with. Are you good with having your notes right in front of you during your talk? Are you good with scrolling on the phone?
Memorizing?
Exactly.
Whatever.
So if whichever is good for you, ensure that you double down on that. And if possible, if you do have, so sometimes when you go to conferences, of course, with being in recruitment, TA, talent, you will have someone that you know in the audience, right? So those are those faces that you can lean on if you get stressed. If you're in a known kind of setup, or some people in there, then that's the face to look at, because you know that person will smile at you and relax for a second. If not, the best trick that I follow with new audiences, and if it's actually more than 50 or 100, then just look beyond. Do not look at the audience. Just look beyond, and you never feel, because however...
If someone's looking at you like scolding, oh God, it's going wrong.
Just look beyond. And the worst thing that I've heard, but it works, if you forget something, is number one, wing it, because no one else knows what you're going to plan. What were you talking about? What was your line after that? So wing it yourself and be super confident while winging it. And the second thing is, if you get very stressed, just imagine everyone in the room is naked. The best place.
I read that for a best man speech once. I think that was my line. I actually used that in the speech and then said, and the bridesmaids are looking beautiful today.
Oh my God, okay. That's a cut, edit.
I definitely, for me, I can't help it, but I naturally will focus on 2 or 3 people in the audience, and it doesn't matter how many people are in the room. I'm actually speaking to those 2 or 3 people, but it tends to be quite at random and pretty much based on where they're sat.
And the ones that look happy.
Yes.
So if you want to look at the ones that are bored or don't want to be there, then you're gonna spiral, aren't you?
Worst one is when you have a gig right after lunch, and you definitely have some of those eyes looking at you like this because they want to just close their eyes like, oh.
Yeah.
You don't want to do those events. Would you think about planting people in the audience with questions? So that you got, just to get you a bit of motivation, so you know that this question's going to be coming up, so that you can, how to answer it.
Well, I haven't really done that for conferences, but of course at work in some of the webinars, you know that, because you would want to get some questions asked anyways
to get people comfortable.
Exactly, yeah.
More so,
Let me think if ever. No, I think never planted us.
No.
But yeah, maybe for fireside, of course. So when you do a fireside chat, then you open up for Q&A, and you will park 2 or 3 questions with the person who's coordinating the fireside chat.
Yes.
And the fillers come.
Just to create some conversation.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Till people can think about, and sometimes even the audience takes a bit of time, right? So
yeah. Cool. So As a closing tradition, we ask our guests to write a random question for the next guest. So the question was written: what area of work in the people space will be most affected by the rise of AI?
And that's what I thought till now. We've spoken for about 45 minutes and we didn't have the word AI thrown.
I know.
No one said
It's about people, connection, network.
Exactly. Just imagine, we just saw one portion where AI may not have that much work. It will have work. It's interesting that this question came up because I just read an article about 2 days ago. This article spoke about, it was a very tactical article on percentage-wise which area of HR will be impacted. So it said 10 to 20% somewhere around with everything which is branding and marketing, because you can, of course, have your messages, channeling, etc. done with the help of AI with your leads. It was very interesting when it came to core recruitment. There's a lot of stuff outside core recruitment, which probably has a higher impact. But core recruitment was 5 to 10%.
Really?
And that was really interesting to me. There were other aspects that talked about learning. Of course, you can automate a lot of it. We've already launched our own +1 AI coach for manager excellence, manager development in OLX recently. We are testing out Retorio, which is a situational leadership tool, again AI based. So from that, it talked about anywhere between 20 to 30% on most of the fields. Recruitment was 5 to 10%. Interestingly, now if we look at the parts to it, of course, you have the world of job descriptions, which is augmented writing, etc. Admin, yeah. So a lot of the admin, yes, already has, or definitely in the next 1 or 2 years will move to AI embedded solutions. However, the part where it comes to human reach outs, the part when it comes to interviewing for mass or really volume positions, we already have AI tools which are helping out. However, when you
nurturing and sequencing and things like that.
Exactly, but you're talking about the niche areas, you would still have that human interview with a human. Because even when you ask candidates, even now, when we ask candidates that you want to look at the first stage as your coding challenge in engineering, they rather not. They would rather talk to the people manager or the interviewer. They were fine and very happy to do a live coding, but not just running through a coding challenge, sitting somewhere, etc. So I think there's a portion, a chunk of it, which is very human-centric. And that human-centric will continue for some time. Yes, the admin aspect outside periphery of recruiting will definitely move to this embedded bit.
There's loads of things, like you say, job descriptions that can be,
of course,
and recruiters hate doing it, so they're happy for AI to take care of it.
Hate doing it, recruiters hate doing it. So all those sundry random stuff that is on the periphery will definitely move more.
I've seen some couple of people just for for fun have created some AI interviewing tools. I don't know if you've seen them. It's like an AI generated person on a Google Meet. So it's trying to replicate that. I can't see that taking off.
We tried that. It can. Well, for me, it was very creepy because when we were trialing it, you can lip sync with it. So it can be, Harry, it can be you, but I can ask those questions. And that is scary, folks. I don't want my interview.
It's like deep fake.
Exactly. If you're interviewing me, I want you to look into your eye and talk to you, not to an avatar, right? So that's a little bit creepy there. But yeah, people are trialing all kinds of things.
I don't think that will take off. And also, I think we've seen a lot of attempts at automation in recruitment that haven't necessarily been massively successful, because there is a people element. When you're moving your career, you want that connection with somebody in that business. If it's an avatar, are you really going to develop that connection with an organization to move your career to? I'm not sure.
I think if we're talking about all people topics, I would say that there are other areas of admin outside of talent acquisition that are probably more ripe for
very.
For me, I think things like visa eligibility. So basically, I think it would be easier from an admin perspective to have like AI that was able to like scan an application for eligibility and then make a suggestion about process. But at the same time, it would be really difficult because it would have to be country specific, everything like that. But
even people analytics, now that you're saying this, a lot of that is about big data. Where does AI really work well? It's big data.
Big data, yeah, for sure.
A lot of people data in your organization. Today, you would have probably a team of 5-6 people in that bucket. Now, with the help of AI, that's where I think we can really infer a super fast speed, not leaning on monthly reports, but rather saying
real-time analytics.
Like real-time analytics. That is something that I haven't seen a lot of products looking into it at the moment. But that's an area
I would like to see AI really improve workforce planning.
Yeah.
I feel like it's
all about
there's too much guessing work with workforce planning, and actually, AI can certainly improve the way in which the machine learning systems can understand where a business wants to get to and how we're going to get there, removing any biases of the person that's going, we're going to need 6 people here, and how we can do that. I think that would be a really cool,
like you're saying,
cool use of it.
The cool use of AI for workforce planning is the forward planning and being able to predict where
global economic changes. Even you can even use AI to analyze the economic situation to change workforce plans potentially.
Yeah, there's a lot, like early Rex, you also mentioned, the everything which is admin, even from recruiting perspective. JDs, people don't like to write it. Hiring managers don't like to write it. Scorecards, that's another thing.
Yeah.
So I think we have I've heard of a product called MetaView, maybe. So, we attended some webinar with this organization, and it's pretty much scripting, and they do a very good job of writing out your scorecard. It can also segment it. So if you want things to be based on your culture or values in your scorecard, it gets segmented easily. You don't have to wait for those 48 hours and keep nudging your hiring manager, etc. That's another thing that...
I saw someone post the other day to say when you're doing your scorecard, you can just simply type your notes, because when you're on a screening call, your notes can be pretty rough.
Yeah.
And then you just add those notes into ChatGPT,
and then that gives
and then just say, can you write the formal sentences? This was for an interview for a candidate for X, for Y, blah blah blah, and it basically produces notes for you,
and also scan for bias.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's really really interesting. I think they're definitely those administrative parts. What we really want recruiters doing is talking to people.
Exactly.
Is finding and headhunting and spending their time in those areas of recruitment that cannot be done by a machine.
And when I say scan for bias in a scorecard, it's not so that you can basically rewrite it. It's so you can actually challenge your own feedback score.
For sure.
And recognise that actually this might be
unconscious bias.
Maybe this isn't fair feedback.
Yeah. Really interesting.
That's an interesting thing. For sure.
So yeah. Fantastic insight there.
Very interesting world.
It's almost like you came prepared for that question, Manjuri. You just so happened to read an article. This wasn't there. So I think that's a wrap, isn't it?
Yeah.
So thank you so much for allowing us into your amazing office to record this fantastic episode.
We don't want to leave.
Yeah,
too nice here.
Yeah, we're only stopping because Manjuri's got a call in 5 minutes. So we'll wrap up now. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Work from home, and so we said, what keeps you from coming to the office, or what would make you come back?
Really interesting point.
I was talking about this in another podcast because we had a conversation about this, and I remember you saying your expectation was like, oh, you want a pool table and a games room, but no, it was actually way more logical, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Quiet space was a big one that come up, right? Quiet space to be able to work.
And prayer room, There were people who said they needed to pray several times a day, and that's why they stayed home. And since we have the prayer room, they come all the time.